be a few minutes. Hello, everybody. I'm Tammy Gaskell. I'm the director at the Role of Jansen Community Library in Copiague, and I'm also the treasurer of the Columbia County Libraries Association. And we're going to get started in just a minute. We still have people joining. We had quite a few people sign up, so that's great. I'm glad that you are all able to join us tonight. Um, Before we get started, or as we get started, let me just give a few housekeeping details. Because this is a webinar, you won't be able to ask questions as we're going along, but you can put any questions you have in the chat or in the Q&A, which you should find at the bottom of your screen. And I will be monitoring that, and I will ask Frieda any questions that you have. Also, at the end, we may have time where you could also raise your hand using the little icons to let me know that you'd like to speak, and I could unmute you and you could ask your questions then. So there will be time for questions. Just throw them in the chat or the Q&A, and we will get to them. Just going to wait another minute and let a few more people get in. This is being recorded, and we will have it up on the Columbia County Libraries Association website by the end of the week, as will be the handout that I hope everybody received. I just sent a handout with additional resources that Frieda has provided us. So if you didn't get that already, check your email afterwards and you'll find that. All right, well, let's just get started. One other little housekeeping detail. For us to have a better idea of exactly how many people are attending tonight, if you are with somebody else and watching on the same screen, if you could please just put that information into the chat, that would help us know how many people we're reaching tonight. So let's get started. So I'd like to welcome Frieda Pearce, who is a Master Gardener volunteer with the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia-Greene County. And I have heard Frieda present before on this topic, and it's a fascinating topic, one we all need to be paying attention to, and that is the managing of invasive plants and insects. You know, they're just everywhere. I love this picture she has showing us. It looks like they're just taking over everything. It's like an otherworldly sort of view here. I will then just turn it over to Frieda.
Great. Thanks a lot, Tammy, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to work with you and to talk to all of you, although I'm doing this on Zoom, so I don't really see a whole bunch of you. And if I get robotic, then you'll know why. I'm sort of talking to my computer, but uh, I will continue. I'm going to try and cover as many plants and insects that we see in Columbia County and that we expect to see in Columbia County, but I don't know if I'll be able to do a complete comprehensive review. So any questions you may have, you can reach out to your Master Gardener local affiliate and use their hotline to ask the questions. No, master gardeners are an esoteric title. We are not really masters. We just try to keep up with the research that Cornell does and other cooperative extensions do and try to make it available to the public. One thing I do want to mention is that we are having a spring gardening day on March 28th. We will have a food gardening track as well as another track which deals with flowers, and it also deals with native plants and other topics, rain gardens, and our keynote speaker is Carolyn Summers. And if you may be aware that she's one of the people in Columbia County who is an expert on growing natives. So if you can spare the time, please avail yourself of this opportunity because it ends up being quite a fun day. Okay, now we head into invasive species. What are invasive species? They are plants, insects, or microorganisms that are not native to our particular ecosystem and whose introduction can cause economic harm, environmental damage, or make you ill, affect your human health, because they often lack natural predators and they can spread quickly. Um, it's damages all kinds of things: wildlife, ecological balance, agriculture, infrastructure, and even natural resources. Unfortunately, much of this responsibility of managing invasive species falls on either the landowner or the farmer in this county. I'm going to briefly mention some of the invasive species we see. There's the Japanese knotweed. A lot of it is found along the Kinderhook Creek in Malaysia. The aquatic plants like water chestnut, I believe, but don't hold me to this. The upper Rhoda Pond in Copake has a lot of water chestnut, which has to be essentially dredged and is very expensive. The emerald ash borer has done away with a lot of our ash trees in Columbia County, and then we now have to deal with Asian jumping worms, and there are zebra mussels also in some of our lakes. So here we have a picture of two plants. One of them is a native plant, and it occurs naturally in the region. Life depends for insects and birds on these kinds of plants. There's something that looks very similar here, but it's not a native plant, it's an exotic plant. Sometimes we buy these things and put them in the garden for their shape, for their color. It pleases our aesthetics, but sometimes they don't do us a service. Same thing goes for trees. We have native black cherry or the native oak, any kind of oak. According to Doug Talame, these trees support more than 450 species of caterpillar, and the fruit is eaten by over 47 bird species. Let me tell you, a lot of graduate student labor hours have gone into that. So whereas if you have on the right-hand side, you see a Kwanzan cherry tree, or you have a Japanese cherry. Those are beautiful trees. In the spring, they have vibrant pink flowers, and they're just very pleasing to the eye. But it does not support any caterpillars, and they do not produce any edible fruit. In fact, if you stand underneath the tree, all the fruit is just at the bottom around under the tree canopy. Oh, did I skip something? Let's see. No, I didn't. Okay, so what is the negative impact of invasive plants? Invasive plants outcompete and displace natives drastically by reduce the biodiversity of the local habitat. They do it by prolifically producing seeds or using methods under the soil to perpetrate and produce new plants. You see in the central picture, there is no understory. One of the reasons could be deer browsing, but the other one could also be that these trees, whatever they are, may produce something that prevents local native plants from taking root. Here's a stand of invasives. So, how do these work? They essentially disrupt the food web. Um, the excuse me, the butterfly lays its eggs on, see, the oak leaf, and then the caterpillars hatch and they proceed to eat the leaves where the eggs were laid. The birds feed their clutch of chicks with caterpillars, and those caterpillars, whatever are left, also pupate and produce butterflies. So this is the food web. If if you lay your eggs on a non-native tree, no, the caterpillars don't like them, and so they don't survive. And the cycle of life is broken. So it's very important that we um, continue in this, continue the cycle so that we can essentially carry our life forward, and this eventually affects our lives as well. So Doug Talame has indicated that these are keystone species that are necessary to support our bee and bird and butterfly population. And these are oaks and cherries and willows and birch and maple. These are our local trees, and it's what we need to preserve and get rid of things that are not local. And here also we have examples of native plants. There are perennials, coneflower, phlox, black-eyed Susan, bee balm, and the trees are, we just went through them. The vines are changing. There are a couple of vines that are coming up from southeastern United States called the trumpet vine and the Virginia creeper. They may tend to take over and blanket your landscape, so you have to keep them in check. Unlike the non-native stuff, they don't secrete things that make it difficult for our native plants to grow, but they can grow rapidly and smother. In fact, trumpet vine goes underneath the ground and can go to many, many areas far away and proliferate. And the shrubs that are good are all these serviceberries, elderberries, and viburnums. They produce food that the birds eat in the winter. Why do we have ornamental landscape trees? Well, originally they were introduced to New York City to provide shade. They had to be hardy, so you have salt, you have gasoline, you have junk on the roads, and they should not die, be poisoned by contaminants. So they had a collection of trees that they got, and also I don't quote me on this, but I believe to improve relationships between Japan and the US after the Second World War, I think there was some effort to bring some Japanese trees into various cities as a cultural exchange. And some of these are the ornamental cherry trees, the Kwanzan cherry trees, uh, and then we have, and the Japanese maple, and we also have the Callery pear. There are a lot of them in Columbia County, especially near the towns. Um, and the tree of heaven, and the ginkgo bilboa, which is the maidenhair tree, is also a street tree. The Norway maple is an interesting example that was brought over very early on, and they thought it was a beautiful tree, but unfortunately, they're the last ones to shed their leaves in the fall, and the first ones to grow their leaves in the spring. So here's the Norway maple. The leaves are very big, they're gorgeous actually, and they end up covering the understory and nothing can grow under them because they provide blanket shade. On the left-hand side, you will see Japanese stilt grass, and garlic mustard, and over here we have buckthorn. These are a list of some of the non-native species we see. So one of the ways this works, and I'm sure if you're driving up and down the, what is it called? The Taconic Parkway, you'll notice that there are various areas where there are trees covered with vines. They can be extremely fast growing. Again, maybe the first ones to leaf in the spring and the last one to lose their leaves in the fall. They don't care about the soil that is underground. They can use sand or rock or dry or wet. They carry on regardless. Nothing wants to eat these leaves. No, maybe some goats, but even they're particular about what they eat. They have multiple methods of reproduction. They produce thousands of seeds, and they also can change the soil composition, which is called allelopathy, and this inhibits the growth of native seedlings. So they're very self-protective. I will also go into a bunch of insects that are found in our Columbia County. Just briefly, this is found on pine trees, the little cotton wool kind of things. They tend to be very destructive of the pines. You have to cut them off. Called the emerald. No, that's not it. The hemlock woolly adelgid. And the best way to deal with this is essentially to remove any branches that have this white woolly stuff and save the tree. How did they get here? Several means. They usually come on with global trade on these huge container ships. They also are found in ballast water, especially the mussels, packing materials, shipping containers, wood, plywood. We also use ornamentals. We get ornamentals that we want to buy from the Far East for various reasons, because they look pretty, because they help with erosion, or they can be medicinal plants. So some are accidental hitchhikers and others are deliberate. Why is New York State especially vulnerable? Because we have major ports, airports, and we also have extensive canal and rail network. So they help spread this. So this picture just shows the Northeast and what is covered by the invasive plants. But however, don't forget that our climate is very similar to the climate in the Ohio Valley, and sometimes this whole area from here to Ohio to Pennsylvania and the entire Southeast, especially with global warming, or you see invasive plants proliferate in all these areas, some as far as Michigan. So it's very costly to deal with invasive species. The US spends 100 billion annually to address these problems, and globally, a whole lot more is spent. There are 50,000 approximately species of exotic invasive plants and animals that have come into the United States. Some of them are not just little things, they're snakes of various kinds, which results in a sharp reduction of native species and subsequent biodiversity. It adversely affects agriculture. It proposes health threats to humans, livestock and pets. And of course, if you get overwhelmed with these growths, it decreases your property value. Now, in an effort to educate everyone, the New York State PRISM, which is the Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, is trying to establish education and how to develop early detection and rapid response to these encroachment. Uh, and they will also provide you with methods to eradicate the species, whether insect or plant. And they also educate the public and they recruit and train volunteers. They also support citizen science. And I'll talk about how that comes into our uh, control of the species. So New York State divides it into three tiers. Tier one is not really a threat, but it's sort of borderline. I mean, kudzu and linden. Linden is a nice tree. The Seibold viburnum is a nice bush. They do not consider it completely as a invasive species in PRISM. Tier two is getting there. The English ivy is absolutely terrible. It ends up going up trees, shading the tree leaves, and killing the tree. The same thing with um, just like some of the other invasives that will come to, like the knapweed or the knotweed. Um, the Japanese maple and all of these other trees, the tree lilac, don't really produce anything that our insects will eat. Tier 3 species is definitely considered um, widespread and invasive and should be eradicated. Some of these, like the English ivy, should be eradicated. The crabapple doesn't help us. So if you have any useless crabapple trees, they should be eradicated. I don't think anybody eats those. Any insects or animals, your deer won't eat those crabapples. So the best thing to do is see if there is any local people going around trying to look at invasive species, trying to remove them. This is an effort by the Columbia Land Conservancy where they have workshops. And when you look at an invasive species with your hands, you will recognize them more quickly than looking at my screen or any screen for that matter. So I'll go through a few of the species and what one can do. Garlic mustard has this kind of leaf. It has white flowers that appear in the spring. The best way to get rid of it is to hand pull in the early spring before these flowers do any damage. You have to make sure you pull out the entire root. And if you take off, if any of this breaks off, then it'll start up again. And then you have to bag the plants uh, in in a black garbage bag, and you will have to carry on this process for at least 3 to 5 years until you completely eliminate it. Do not compost and do not wait till these flowers go to seed. So here you will be like a lot of us in Columbia County, a crazy person going around with a 5 gallon black bag and perhaps a bucket of mouthwash diluted or hand sanitizer diluted or soapy water, a sawzall, or maybe a chainsaw, clippers, all of these things you'll be walking around with on your property to get rid of. So when you get these black bags full of these invasives, you have to put it somewhere where it'll solarize and kill everything, and the seeds included. don't just put it in your compost or don't put it in the Columbia County compost either. Um, if you go into the DEC website, they will give you more clear instructions how to get rid of um, what you've collected in your black plastic bag and solarized. Usually, the solarization should go for over a year. So you have to keep these in the woods somewhere, heavily weighed down with wood or stone or something like that. The Japanese stilt grass is again seed bank driven. It's very hard to get rid of it, but it's very easy to pull out of the ground. They come out in clumps. Um, and when you have bare soil, you have to make sure that you put something else there, like a sedge or something, so it doesn't get reinfected with the stilt grass. So again, a very long time of watching these before you are completely done with this particular um, invasive grass. These are all allelopathic and produce thousands of seeds. So again, pull early. Pulling too early encourages them to resprout. Pulling after the seeds drop, that which is in the late fall, is no good. So you have to somehow pull it like in August or somewhere there, and timing is critical for this. So when you look at this, can you tell me can you tell yourself, because you can't tell me right now, which is Japanese stilt grass versus your regular lawn grass? And here is what it is, if you guessed correctly. All right, here's the spotted knapweed. It's a biennial. You can take it out quite easily if it's in small patches. You just hand pull or dig them out. You can use herbicide. We'll talk about that later on. And don't leave the area untended. As soon as you pull out these knapweed, put something else in its place. Don't try mowing it. That is no good either. It's essentially you have to get the root out. The next few are very troublesome invasives. They spread through rhizomes. Mugwort is one of them. Very difficult to eradicate. You can cut them, cover them with cardboard, and put huge rocks on the cardboard to smother them, but you will still see them coming up around the edge of your cardboard, and you have to keep increasing this area. And this has to go on for a few years before you get rid of mugwort. I know there are people who say we make good things out of mugwort, why get rid of it? But then you can't grow anything else. You just have fields of mugwort. Don't dig. If you can cut the stems and use herbicide, that's good. Foliar spray is not advisable generally because you end up maybe contaminating your soil and contaminating your water supply. So we'll cover that in a little more detail later on. Smothering may help, but again, you have to keep increasing the footprint of your cardboard or plastic or whatever you use to smother the plant as every year until it's gone. Don't try tilling because that just propagates it all over, it spreads. Japanese knotweed is very similar. Again, it spreads via rhizomes. 1 inch can grow a whole new plant. They go underground for 10 to 20 feet. Don't cut it. Don't trim the whole thing off. If you're going to cut it, once again, you have to poison it, with the herbicide. Again, something that takes 3 to 5 years. Porcelain berry is an invasive vine. sometimes you can mistake it for a grapevine. The only difference between a grapevine and an invasive porcelain-berry vine is they are multicolored, whereas the grape just has one color, which is sort of grape-colored. The birds disperse the seeds. There is vigorous resprouting if you cut the roots, as it can grow up to 20 feet in a season. Again, um, when the fruit is present in the late summer and fall, you should cut it before the fruit starts to spread its seeds. Um, so we'll cover that in a second. A mile a minute vine is thorny and grows all over the place. However, it's more conducive to being yanked out. However, if any little piece of your root system is there, it'll start up again. The Oriental bittersweet is very much like uh, the porcelain berry. They're very they're crazy vines. I mean, you see them waving in the breeze like um, the snake charmer's snake, and they wave in the breeze until they can grow and latch on to some tree, and then go up that tree. It's really, if you cut them, they go run underground for many, many feet, 30 or 40 feet. If you cut them, they sort of grow underground where they can come up somewhere else. So again, cutting them and treating them with herbicide is a good idea. You can pull, or if you can, you have to try and get the whole root. Swallowwort is also a climbing vine. It spirals around itself and other plants in extensive patches. They can also trail along the ground, but because it cannot stand up straight without support, and then goes off winding around some tree that it can help get more sunlight. Um, Again, grows underground and overground and produces seeds. Very hard to deal with. Same thing is true of Japanese honeysuckle. This is not a shrub, this is a vine. You have a Japanese honeysuckle shrub as well. And in the winter, it appears like dried up vines, but they come to life again in the spring. Here is eastern pine. It's been taken over by various climbing um, vines. They're all invasive, and pretty soon it'll have shaded out all the sunlight in the spring and summer. And this pine tree, it's a magnificent pine tree, about over 60 feet tall, will die unless one can do something about all this growth underneath the pine tree and kill it. Now we'll go move on to invasive shrubs. Some of these are not bad. The burning bush and the Japanese barberry were both planted by gardeners. The burning bush, because in the fall it turns a beautiful red color, and the Japanese barberry grows like a boxwood. It's pretty attractive, but they tend to spread by their seeds being carried off by birds into the forest. So they're not very safe. Also, the ticks seem to love this Japanese barberry because of the structure of the leaves and the stems. They tend to hide out in the bush. So they're like a tick magnet. So with the Russian or autumn olive is an ugly shrub when there are no leaves on it. When there are leaves on it, the top of the leaf is green. The underside is like a silvery gray. It looks pretty, and in this fall, it produces berries, which again is spread by the wind or the birds. And the shrub honeysuckle does not smell like a native honeysuckle, and it also spreads quite rapidly. Now, with all of these things, you can cut at the bottom as close to the ground as possible in the fall. Always remember in the fall because that's when all of the nutrients from the leaves get sucked into the roots and they store it in the roots for the winter. Among all these shrubs, the multiflora rose is the easiest to deal with because if you cut it a few times, it gets tired of trying to grow and won't grow. The shrub honeysuckle and the Russian autumn olive, bad news. It just keeps popping up. You say you cut it in this part of your yard, and then 1 acre farther away, you see it popping up. The same thing is true of the Japanese barberry. The autumn olive also produces a lot of seeds, and if you cut it where you think you've gotten rid of it in one area of your yard, it might appear an acre down the road. So, so how do you control these? You can use mechanical control, as with the case of excuse me, the grass, where you hand pull all the grass. If not, dig out, or the garlic mustard, dig out as much of the root as it's possible. Pick a wet day to do this so they don't break off. You have to frequently watch that area and make sure that nothing appears. Before anything really appears, you should put in some native shrubs, um, echinacea, bee balm, something, so that these seedlings don't start up again. You can also try periodic mowing with some of the vines, but um, they may slow the plant spread, but may not kill it. So it's not always a great idea. You can instead cut the vines and at the base near the tree where they're going up some tree, and maybe you can try a chemical control. Here you see they have cleared a lot of the vines and they have planted trees in tubes. And among these, this is a winter picture taken after everything has died. Among these trees, they have planted some attractive native shrubs and flowers. The thing to remember is certain flowers are very short, like the purple brown and black-eyed Susan might grow about 1.5 to 2 feet. The ironweed and the Joe Pye weed may go to 3 or 4 feet. And the echinacea is about 2 feet, and the New England asters are even shorter than that. So you should plant them so there is a grade and all of them get sunlight. So one in front of the other, the shortest ones being in front. And various sedges like the Carex Pennsylvania does well. They cover a larger piece of ground and they're like perennial grasses. They don't allow anything to get in between them. Now we get to invasive trees. I have 4 examples here. The Norway maple we discussed to some extent, and the tree of heaven is another oriental tree, not supposed to use that word, Asian tree, sorry. And they are not great to have around. I will explain why. The Japanese angelica tree, in its native habitat in Japan, grows about 40 to 30 feet wide and 40 feet tall. However, they've been planted here, they don't get quite as big, but they also are not a native tree. Some of these tolerate a wide variety of soil types. They, like the Japanese angelica tree, like moist, well-drained, fertile soil, and thrive in full sun. And the very left-hand side, where's my mouse? There it is. It is the buckthorn. You see these purple fruits. The best thing to do with the buckthorn is make sure that the fruits will not turn to seed, will not produce seed anytime soon. These are highly invasive trees. Here is the example of a tree of heaven. There are two species, the male and the female. The female is the one that's the troublemaker and can provide a haven for the spotted lanternfly. Here is the buckthorn. You see, there it has a pattern of growing trees one next to the other. And then, lo and behold, it's starting another stand about a foot and a half away. So if you cut all of these, you have to make sure you cut these, and if there are little shrubs all around, you can treat it with foliar spray. But for chemical control, the best thing to do so as to not to contaminate your land or your water supply is to cut the branches. And you can cut the stem as close to the ground as possible. If there are little plants growing around the stem, try and yank them out. Always pick a wet day to yank out the short plants, but you can pick any day to cut the stem. Now, the best thing to do when you cut the stem is to paint the phloem and the cambium layers with your toxic material, whether it's glyphosate or triclopyr. I would go with the triclopyr because it's most often more toxic than the glyphosate. Sometimes the glyphosate doesn't do its job in one application. Where the foliage is all over the place, you might want to spray, but I usually suggest that somebody who's certified in dealing with uh, chemicals is the one who does the spraying because they know how to safeguard themselves as well as your land. So that's what you need to do. Here is a picture of making a solution of triclopyr with, I think it's 1:4 ratio. They put a little dye so you can see where you applied the the herbicide, and hopefully this tree will not propagate. Sometimes you have to do this many times every fall so you can reduce the biomass of whatever you're treating. Here is a man who is doing a foliar spray of an invasive species, and that's how you got to dress up to make sure you don't contaminate yourself. Always treat regrowth and in the summer or in the late fall actually is better. Now we'll move on to insects. As many of you know, the emerald ash borer has done a wonderful job on our ash trees. It's a wood boring beetle. What it does is, if you look on the right-hand side, it eats away in the cambium and phloem layer of the tree. This is where all the tree's nutrients go up to the leaves, and it makes this great canals all throughout the tree, around the tree, so it ends up girding the tree. And it's very much like the voles that you see make roads in your lawn. After the snow, when the snow melts, you will see these vole tracks. It's very similar to that on the tree. Once this has happened, it's time out, time over for the tree. And the current way of treating them, of course, is you need, again, a certified person to do this. They inject insecticides into the tree's cambium layer um, from the bottom near the roots of the tree. The other thing that we have to concern about, it's not really that concerning because spongy moth infestations last 2 or 3 years, then disappear. There's an interesting story about the spongy moth. There was a scientist who decided that he wanted to make silk, so he decided, oh, I'll order some moths and they will cross with some of our caterpillars and I can make silk. Well, he got a shipment of moths. He left them on his windowsill because he thought they'd be better off. There's better aeration there and they'd be healthier by the windowsill. However, they all became moths and they flew out. And hence, this is how we got apparently a spongy moth infestation. Now, this is a female moth. They don't fly around. They stay on the tree where they hatch. And this is the male moth that does fly around and it looks for females to fertilize their eggs. They feed mostly on hardwoods. And if you notice in certain parts in Columbia County, they defoliated a tree, and sometimes later in the fall, that tree seems to appear to develop leaves again. Some of these trees have stored enough nutrients so they can grow a second crop of leaves to provide a source to gather nutrients again and to store in their roots. So they don't do a terribly destructive job. They do destroy some trees. They're usually trees that are either very old, have already been attacked by something or the other. So how do you get rid of spongy moths? Well, they sort of end up getting rid of themselves. If there are too many, if there's a huge population, they run out of food and they starve. The government has released a virus called NPV. This virus infects the moths and kills them off. That virus is generally carried within the moths. And when the population rises, the virus also rises and ends up infecting the moths. The other thing that they also are susceptible to the fungus Entomophagum maimaga. This was also released by the US as a biologic control agent. This fungus is often found on the leaf litter and the bottom of the forest floor. And what happens is if it rains a lot and there's a lot of moisture, this fungus gets activated. And then, of course, it's available to attack the spongy moth. So the spongy moth populations are cyclical. They rise and fall roughly every 10 to 15 years. And if they're there, the worst infestation is the first or second year of their arrival, and then they taper off and disappear. A lot of research has been done at the Carey Institute in Just Dutchess to prove this, and you can look it up if you're interested. Now, the tree of heaven, as I said before, is has a male and female tree. Uh-oh. And so it's the host. The female tree is a host for this spotted lanternfly. They lay eggs on the tree, which give rise to nymphs. Nymphs produce these flying insects, adults, and the way to distinguish a tree of heaven versus a Staghorn sumac is a leaf, has this notch at the very beginning. Now, the way right now, I don't believe there are any of these spotted lanternflies in Columbia County, but famous last words, they might appear this spring. They've been all over New York City and gradually going up. However, the best way to kill them is to approach them from the front and stomp on them with your shoe. If you approach them from the back, they'll fly away. They're very pretty bugs, but do a dreadful job on your grape leaves, and so they're not really worth encouraging. So, however, the population in New York City has fallen off mainly because they have uprooted a lot of the female tree of heaven, which grows again underground and produces lots of shoots and baby trees. And they've also, the children have had a wonderful time along with the adults killing these on the sidewalk. So there are, and for some reason, the population has fallen off as well, and research is being done to determine why. And the Asian longhorn beetle has no predators. The way to tell them is they make holes in the trunks of the trees. Uh, that's what they look like. They have it's about 20 spots on the wings with long antennae. They infect all our popular trees, maple, willow, elm, and also our fruit trees. And this is how big they are compared to a dime. Now I'll get on to jumping worms. We all have them by now in our garden. In fact, New York State thinks that these are pretty much permanent. They reproduce quickly, they overwinter, and you have to have a really, really cold winter, freezing the soil to get the cocoons to be killed off. Hopefully we'll have luck this year. We have no idea. The main way to distinguish them from your regular earthworms is the clitellum. It's smooth and milky, whereas this one is reddish and striped. You see it more clearly here. The best way to deal with them is to prevent them from getting into your yard. You have to make sure you get heat-treated mulch. Uh, the It's hard now to get delivery of certain items that you need for your yard because they have somehow infiltrated everywhere. They're trying to work on best ways to kill these worms. One of them, this 2025 study by Hort Technology looked at a fungicide called T-Bird and Seven. Seven, as everybody knows, is extremely toxic. And they found it killed the worms in containers. They mostly studied containers. But this is not yet approved for use, so you can't go around buying this and spraying it willy-nilly in your yard. It'll it'll be toxic. So some of the ways to get them to come to the surface is to use mustard or alfalfa. They come to the surface and then you can scoop them up and put them in um, alcohol water or soapy water. This won't kill the cocoons or the larvae, but um, they're usually in the sand and the soil, and the soil looks like coffee grounds. So you can sometimes scrape up or stir up the top of the soil and get the cocoons to come up, especially in the late fall. So hopefully in the winter they will freeze. Once they are established in the woodland or meadow or in the garden, it's very hard uh, to deal with. And the best way to make sure that they don't spread is give them a lot to eat, such as leaf litter. Um, when you are gardening, make sure you inspect before planting, dig up the soil, see if you have worms there. Avoid bringing new soil in or compost or mulch unless it's heat treated. Go bare root when possible. If you want to wash your plants, make sure that the water runs into your septic and doesn't run into the ground. Wash all the soil off the roots and then plant them. Don't mulch uh, right in the beginning of the spring. Wait. Uh, Exposed soil warms more evenly and it helps reduce the worm cover. Make sure that you periodically clean your shovels, forks, and boots when you walk around. So if you have worms in the woodlands and landscapes and meadows, what do you do? Early spring, they're not sprouted yet. They're not. So leave the leaf litter. Don't walk in the woods. Just walk on the paths that you have to avoid spreading. A late spring, they hatch. Again, make sure you walk on the trails and don't walk um, off trail so that you don't spread them. Make sure you clean your boots and tools when you get back to out of the forest. The summer, late August, they are at peak activity. You can't really do any large scale removal. You just have to slow the spread. You can use leaf litter or put signs saying don't walk worms. In the winter, um, if the adults die and we have to have patience and use long-term um, ways of dealing with them. In your gardens, it may be a little easier. You have to use plant bare root plants or plants that you've grown yourself in sterile medium, if it's your vegetables. In late spring, they hatch after a rain or do shallow digging around if the worms pop up. Mark those spots and gather those worms and pour them in to alcohol water or soapy water or something. I'll have to run through quickly. The early fall, September, you can try again using mustard or some kind of irritant to get them to come to the surface. Don't move the soil, just try and gather up the worms and try to kill them. The last one I'm getting to is the brown marmorated stink bug. They unfortunately come into your house. They feed on fruits, vegetables, and ornamentals. The best way to deal with them is make sure your house is well sealed. They're highly invasive. They have few natural predators. Unfortunately, they look very similar to soldier bugs. So have a picture of a soldier bug, which is a good bug that you want around. If you squish these guys, they emit an odor and more of them will show up. Again, hand remove on soapy water. Use row covers for early vegetables to exclude these bugs. Japanese beetles and box tree moth. The Japanese beetles are, as you know, they eat your leaves and flowers and fruit very rapidly. There are very few flower bushes they don't like. The grubs feed on the turf and eat the roots. The best thing to do with them is to use grub control with some kind of fungus or um, BT, which is a white dust that you get. that you can spread if you know where the infestation of bugs might be. The other best thing to do is these guys get very sleepy after a hot day in the hot sun. So in the late afternoon, they're just sort of resting on various leaves. Just scoop them up into soapy water. The same is true of the boxwood moth. Soup them up into soapy water, the caterpillars and the moths. Don't buy these beetle traps. They will attract beetles from all over your neighborhood, and you will have an abundance of beetles. Um, if you must use a beetle trap, use it shortly for an hour or so, early in the morning, while they are flapping around. Once they start getting sleepy, um, it won't be effective, and you should put them away so they don't attract beetles from everywhere. So the best advice for dealing with this is you are the person that can make a difference. The gardener now has to take on the role of managing the wildlife. You might say to yourself, gee, we still have vegetables in all of our farmers markets and our farm stands. How can we have vegetables and you're saying that we are invaded by species? Well, now the farmers are struggling to produce vegetables. They use release various pollinators, and some farmers, not in Columbia County, but elsewhere, go around pollinating trees with what is it, a Q-tip or something of similar nature. They're trying to somehow overcome the disability of not having enough insect and wildlife. Try and plant natives wherever you dig up what you dig up. Um, they're low maintenance. Once you plant them, they do just fine. They don't need a lot of care or water or support. They help butterflies and bees and hence birds. And there are several websites that tell you what's native in our area. So here's a list of various things you can plant instead of uh, various gray dogwood is not a vine, but it's a shrub. Strawberry bush is a very attractive shrub with red leaves. And maple leaf viburnum, swamp milkweed, purple coneflower, all of these are very colorful and will work well in the yard. Now, there is an app called the iNaturalist app that you can use to determine what you're looking at. You can also get, I'm sorry, you can't see this. A New York State has a handbook that shows you what the invasives are in this area. You can also ask the Cornell Master Gardeners. There's also an invasive species ID website and what you can do, it stores what you saw by GPS. So it sends this information on to the PRISM website, and they have a good idea what you might have in your area. This is the app. It's called IMAP Invasives. You can put it on your mobile phone, and it sends information to your local PRISM. And also get involved in local projects. That's how you recognize invasive species, and also talking to one another. You can figure out what's the best way to get rid of things. This is again the collaboration of Columbia County individuals with the Columbia Land Conservancy. This is the Siegel Klein project that they did. It was multi-year, removing Japanese honeysuckle and planted more than 70 native trees. Some of these areas that are infested require heavy machinery like this, and It sort of will make the landowner's life kind of expensive. All right, I think I am done. I'm open to questions. Here are various websites that you might want information. I also sent out a fact sheet from which I've gleaned most of the information on my talk. So, okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Frieda.
Tammy, you're
Hi,
very
we do have a few questions. The first one from a couple of people is they were interested in the gardening day that you mentioned at the beginning, and they wondered where is that?
It's at the Hudson High School. The high school in Hudson, there's only one. Just enter it in to the GPS. It's on the other side of Route 9, um, uh, on the other side of 66 going west. So Route 9 and 66 are sort of parallel, so it's in Route 9, right in Hudson. It's a very nice high school.
Did people have to register in advance for that?
Well, it may be helpful to the organizers to know how many people are coming.
Yeah.
But if if some people say, oh, it's a rainy day, I might as well do this. Yeah, I don't think anybody will turn you away
Okay. I
unless
assume
we
that.
reach capacity, which is like 200 individuals. I don't think we will, but
Okay, and I assume there's more information on that on the Cooperative Extension website.
right. Go to the
Yes.
website, it'll give you details. Sure. And also
Okay.
the classes that are being covered.
Okay. So a couple other questions. Somebody asked, you mentioned the invasive vines along the Taconic. They wondered what kinds of vines are those? What is their name and who is working to contain or eradicate them, or is anybody?
Well, some counties have their I think they're highway management people because they're hazards. The tree is covered with vines, it dies, and it can fall over on the road and create a traffic issue. So the highway department comes and cuts down these infected trees and clears the area. And if you notice, some of those areas, they chip the wood and leave the chips right there, hoping, of course, that they don't take root again. Uh, the vines are the ones I mentioned, the Japanese honeysuckle, the porcelain berries, the oriental bittersweet, um, and I don't think there are any ivies, English ivies on the highway, but that's what I think they are. So it's
Another,
usually the highway,
yeah, the highway department's
yeah.
taking care of it. Yeah. So another person asked, when you get a wildflower seed mix made for our region, can we expect to find some invasives in that, or should it be safe?
It should be safe. They usually gather them from wildflowers. The only sad part about wildflower seed mixes is that if you broadcast it in your area, they may not take root. Some of them need, like what you call uh, cold treatment. Some of them will be eaten by birds. So you can try. Some people have been successful. If you have a very wet spring, you go out and you broadcast the seeds, but you make sure that they fall in furrows or something, so that they don't fly away or don't all end up in one spot because of the wind or something. Always choose a wet day and hope for the best. The other alternative is to plant them, use the winter sowing idea where you take your milk jugs, the gallon milk jugs, you cut around them sort of halfway up the milk jug, and keep the handle still attached. And you can cover the bottom with about 3 inches of potting soil, garden potting soil, and put these packets of seeds in there tape up the cut area and leave them outside in the snow, in the rain, whatever. And whatever sprouts, you can then take and, dig a hole and put the plant in the soil in the spring. That might give you better luck than just broadcasting those seeds.
Okay, thank you. So another person asked about kudzu. Do we have kudzu yet locally?
Uh, there is kudzu along the highway,
There is.
um, but no one's eating them. And I don't know if there's any kudzu in Chatham. Maybe small areas along 295, not sure.
And the last question I have here, unless people have more they want to add, is will we be sharing this presentation? And the answer to that is yes, it is being recorded and we will be posting it on the Columbia County Libraries Association website, hopefully by the end of the week. So that is columbiacountylibraries.org. So if you go there and look for the link for past presentations, you should be able to find this. So I'll just ask one more time if anybody has any other questions. If not, then I guess we will thank Frieda for a very informative presentation. When we post the video, we will also post that handout. So if you didn't get it, it should be there too on the Columbia County Libraries Association website. So
Well,
happy
thank you very
gardening,
much for
everybody.
this.
You have something you wanted to
I
say,
thank
Frieda?
everybody for listening in. I am not usually very animated in Zoom, but I try to do my best.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay. Good night.
No more questions?
No more questions.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.